You're listening to a 3CR podcast recorded in the 3CR Community Radio studio in Melbourne, Australia. If you like what you hear, please consider donating or subscribing so we can keep bringing you more independent community content. For more information, go to 3cr.org.au.
Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Radiothon edition of the Doin Time show, where the ultimate goal is to raise the target of $950 to keep our show on air for another year. Prisoners do not have bank accounts, so we rely very much on the community and the much-loved listeners to donate. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. And a warning that this episode of Doin Time contains audio images of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have died and graphic discussion of deaths in custody. I'm Marissa and I will be with you for the next hour. Today's show will showcase the work of Doin Time over the last 12 months. The Doin Time show has given voice to campaigns and advocacy around racial profiling, black deaths in custody, deportations, the jailing of environmental activists, raising the age of criminal responsibility, eliminating restrictive practices for people with disability and much more. Please donate by calling 9419 8377 or go online on www.3cr.org.au, or you can drop into the station at 21 Smith Street, Collingwood, and drop off your donation, or you can send a cheque or money order to PO Box 1276, Collingwood, Victoria 3065. First up on the show, we're going to be speaking with Joseph Pugliese, who is a very much loved guest and really a feature, not guest, on the show. And we speak to him quite a lot about Uncle Ray Jackson. He commemorates it just about every year, the memorial show. And we've done various other interviews with him as well. Hello, Joseph, welcome.
Hi, Marissa. Lovely to be back. How are you?
Good, thank you. And I hope that that you're well, you and your family are doing well.
We're well, thanks very much, all things considered.
Yeah, oh my goodness. So, Joseph, tell us about why you think there needs to be pledges and donations to the Doin Time show. I know that you're a very much loved friend of Uncle Ray Jackson as well.
Look, there really is no radio station like 3CR. It's absolutely crucial in giving voices that would not otherwise be heard in this country. And I'm talking voices that are structurally, systemically marginalised by mainstream media. People of colour, Indigenous people, prisoners, refugees and asylum seekers. You've done an extraordinary job in offering them a platform to speak on their own terms and to call for justice where they often are at the end of incredible regimes of state violence, imprisonment, forms of torture, psychological torture, killing by police. And 3CR really gives them a platform to speak back and to call for change, social justice change. So all power to you.
Oh, thanks, Joseph. And indeed, the theme this year for Radiothon is Sound on Solidarity. And tell us about Ray Jackson, in case listeners have just tuned in.
Yeah, look, Uncle Ray Jackson was an extraordinary figure who still looms large in my life, and I know he looms large in the life of many other people who were privileged to know him. He was a social justice fighter in the true sense of the word, over 4 decades of work. In the 90s, he was actually, in the 80s, he was crucial in calling for the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. As Aboriginal deaths continued to escalate, he was crucial in formulating the criteria by which the Commission articulated its recommendations. Now, as we know, and Uncle Ray was devastated by this, despite the 330-odd recommendations that the Royal Commission into Indigenous deaths in custody handed down, hardly any of those recommendations have been implemented. So Uncle Ray's work as the former president of the Indigenous Social Justice Association was to continue to pursue the state, the prison system, the criminal justice system, to implement those recommendations so as to stop the ongoing deaths in custody. That was his monumental achievement. And as you know, year in, year out, he would take on cases of Indigenous deaths in custody and follow them through on behalf of the family, and follow them through across a variety of different platforms. For example, he would take on the legal responsibility working with legal workers, but he will also go to autopsies on behalf of the families who could not attend or were too traumatised to attend. And that particular, important aspect of attending for families was a breakthrough that Uncle Ray implemented with a fellow forensic pathologist, Carl Hughes, because the state refused to have any member of the family who was outside the state criminal justice system attend the forensic pathology lab. But Uncle Ray insisted that it was crucial that Indigenous families had a representative that they couldn't attend, so that they could see that the body of their loved one was treated respectfully during the autopsy process. So you can see that he actually made social change, political change across so many different sectors.
It's so lovely to have you on the show, Joseph, and this is really a continuation of the discussion because Maria Jennifer-Offlis came onto the show and spoke about Ray during his memorial show. And in fact, Ray was always on our show every week when he was alive.
Yes, he was. And he was such a devotee of your show precisely because he knew that you had your heart and your politics in the right place and that you were working in solidarity with him.
Absolutely. Joseph, thank you so much for coming onto the program. I'm actually really happy that you've come on. It kind of makes up for the fact that you couldn't make it. Although I loved Maria. Maria is just a beautiful, dynamic speaker as well.
She is. She's fabulous.
Fabulous. Any final comments before we finish?
Oh, look, just one final thing, because it would be remiss of me not to mention this if I've got a minute.
Yep.
Uncle Ray would be horrified at the ongoing genocide that is unfolding in Gaza. Oh. And I say this, and these are going to be my closing words. I've got his words right here before me. As the extraordinarily disturbing genocide unfolds in Gaza, in 2014, the Israeli state had already begun to have a genocidal campaign. It was called Operation Protective Edge, and these were Uncle Ray's words, prophetic words in 2014. This is the 31st of July, 2014. I'm quoting from the Indigenous Social Justice Association newsletter that he wrote. He said, "It is far too long that the genocidal attacks against the civilian population of Gaza must stop, and stop immediately. It now appears that the Netanyahu government of then is in an all-out war of extermination of the Palestinian people. Israel must stop this overkill. That is just the fact that must be done. What must be possible, no, certain, is that the ethnocide of the Palestinians in Gaza must cease once and for all." These were Uncle Ray's words in 2014. How prophetic that they still resonate in this terrible time of mass genocide in Gaza. Marissa?
I know. I think it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And he is horrified. I'm sure he's listening from the other side.
Oh, I'm sure. And, he would want us to be committed to stopping this horror, this genocide that's unfolding. And you can see how his words have lost, sadly, none of their urgency from 2014.
It's a legacy indeed, Joseph, and thank you so much for reading that out. It's potent. It's really, really fantastic.
You're welcome. I wish you every success with the Radiothon. Please, listeners, continue to support 3CR. It's a treasure in our national media network, giving voices to people who would otherwise not be heard. Thank you, Marissa, and all power to you, 3CR.
Thanks a lot, Joseph. Look after
Bye,
yourself.
then.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was Joseph Bulyese, longtime friend of Uncle Ray Jackson and a very much loved part of the family of the Doin Time show.
Yeah, well, I was born on Wurundjeri country, and that's the country.
My name's Sarah Schwartz. I
hang on, I've just got a bit of technical difficulty here. I'll just hang on a sec.
Australia is one of very few nations right across the world
There we are.
that celebrates and marks as their national day the day that they were invaded. Most nations across the world, including former Commonwealth nations, they mark their day, their national day, as, you know, the day that they liberated themselves, the day that they became independent. Whereas here in Australia, for some backwards reason, we all celebrate the day that we were invaded. It's very silly, if you ask me.
I know. What? How is that? What's the logic?
I know, right? And the thing is too, like, you know, for us as First Nations organisers, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of every First Nations organiser,
Sure.
obviously, but, you know, for us in the BPU and for myself personally, it's not just the date as well that we're against. You know, a lot of people talk about changing the date. For us, you know, we don't see any merit in changing the date because at the end of the day, what's being celebrated is the fact that Australia is this colonial imperialist nation. And, you know, people can try and reason with this however they want, and people can try and deny this however they want. But at the end of the day, you know, when you're celebrating Australia and Australian nationality and, you know, everything that Australia is, you're celebrating genocide. You're celebrating apartheid. You're celebrating colonisation and imperialism. You know, you're celebrating the over-incarceration of my people and the theft of our children, the theft of our lands, and so much other horrendous stuff. So, you know, for us, it's not just about changing the date. It's about changing, you know, what we're actually celebrating. And now, don't get me wrong, you know, I want everyone, especially all the, you know, non-Indigenous people out there who, you know, support Australia Day and, you know, want to be proud of Australia and whatever else, rah, rah, rah. You know, don't get me wrong. If Australia was a nation that I could be proud of, I would be a very patriotic Australian and I'll be the first one to go out and celebrate on a national day for Australia. But as it stands, there's nothing to be proud of about this nation and there's no reason to celebrate.
Exactly. I mean, you know, Australia was actually founded on theft.
Yeah, on theft and genocide. And it's a legacy that has continued until this day. You know, this day we still are having to fight for our land. You know, we're still having our land taken off us. You know, recently up in Queensland, for example, the Wangan and Jangalingu people, they had native title, right? Now, don't get me wrong, native title is the weakest, most pathetic form of land rights that you can possibly have in the Westminster system. But they had native title up there. And Adani wanted to put a mine in. The blackfellas up there said no. They refused. So the Queensland government extinguished their native title and gave Adani that land to go set up a mine anyways. You know, this is happening still today. You know, and when we look at stuff like our kids being removed from our families, back in 2007, we had Kevin Rudd apologise for the stolen generation. Back in 2007, when he made that apology, Indigenous child removal rates were already higher than they had been at any point during the official stolen generations policies. That was back in 2007. Every single quarter since, not just every year, but every quarter since, our child removal rates have gone up. And it's at such ridiculous proportions now that something like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 First Nations children down here in the state of Victoria, at one point or another in their childhood, will come into contact with Child Protective Services, or, you know, whatever the state equivalent name is down here. Yeah. And that is how ridiculous it is. That is how many of our children are coming into these systems. And, you know, when we look at how many of our people are being locked up, and, you know, again, our people aren't being locked up because we're criminal people. They're being locked up for petty, you know, often victimless crimes. Something like 80% of First Nations people who are in incarceration for, you know, crap like unpaid parking tickets, or for stealing a bit of food, or for, you know, simple stuff like walking home drunk from the pub one night. You know, how many non-Indigenous Australians walk home drunk from the pub every Friday and Saturday night, and how many of them have to worry about a 6 to 12 month sentence as a result? You know, none of them. But for First Nations people, this is what we're up against, and this is what happens to us. And, you know, it's at the point as well where, you know, it's so ridiculous that our people are more likely to go to jail than they are to graduate high school.
Yeah.
It's such a horrendous statistic.
It's 1788 all over again, because if you really look at it, that's what used to happen when all the people were thrown onto the ships from England to come here.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And, they've just outsourced that exploitation and that oppression to First Nations people.
They really have. It's like a warehousing. I mean, the example is Veronica Nelson.
Yeah.
What happened to her with the shoplifting?
Yep.
A petty crime. It's not even a crime. Anyway, she was probably just hungry. And then they put her in prison and she died.
Yep. And there's so many similar stories from right across the continent, and it's saddening and it's absolutely disgusting. And the worst part is we can't get any justice for this. We've had over 500 Indigenous deaths in custody since the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, and of those 500 deaths, not a single police officer or not a single prison guard has actually been convicted. The vast majority of them, when they kill a blackfellow, what happens is they get a paid break and then they get relocated to another station with a promotion. They literally get paid and promoted for killing our people.
And that was actually a highlight of our show, one of the highlights of our show, with Kieran from the Black People's Union. And we're going to be having up next the beautiful Cheryl from ISJA in Melbourne. And I'm not sure what... Oops, and the show's not even finished. I better... I don't know what's going on. We've got a few gremlins in the studio. The beautiful Cheryl, and I'm going to be organising her right now. Hello, Cheryl. Welcome.
I thought I missed out.
I thought...
I mean, I love the boring...
I think I really just wanted to finish the show.
Oh, sorry.
No, I accidentally bumped the computer. I bumped the computer.
Oh, all right. Blame the computer. No, don't blame the operator. That's all right.
Well, this is why we need Radiothon. We've got so much. The equipment's old, Like we need money to get new equipment if all these technical difficulties are happening, huh?
Yeah, come on, everybody. See, if you've only got a few dollars to spare. Doesn't matter, it all helps, because 3CR, where would we be? Honestly, where would we be without 3CR and programs like Doin Time? I hate to think. I really hate to think.
Tell us more, Cheryl. Why do you think that listeners need to donate?
Well, in this sort of country, we do have cash for comments, unfortunately, on some radio stations. Real cash for comments. We know that the commercial interests of many radio stations is what influences the media content they deliver to the public. But 3CR, I mean, really, no government funding and, programs like Doin Time. I mean, where else do we hear the program, the stuff we hear in depth, not just, a 2-minute grab. You actually take the time, just like when we heard that interview you did with Kieran from Black People's Union. You actually develop the whole context of the issues. It's not just a surface, one-liner and, forget about that and on to the next subject. It's really, it's invaluable. I can't speak highly enough of 3CR and the importance in these times of less and less media diversity.
So important, isn't it, Cheryl? And just to let listeners know that Cheryl is from ISJA, Indigenous Social Justice Association Melbourne, and they do a lot of work to build the movement to stop Aboriginal deaths in custody. And we have done quite a few interviews with ISJA, haven't we, over the years?
Yes, you have. Many, many interviews. And, sadly, it's almost to our shame that these interviews have to continue. I think Kieran mentioned that there'd been over 500 deaths in custody. That'd be since the Royal Commission, and we're saying it's more than 560 now. It's actually more than 560, 3 decades on from when all those recommendations were handed down at the conclusion of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody, and we're seeing no improvement at all. People are just dying, and there's coronial inquests going on. At the moment, we're waiting for the inquest into JC, Joyce Clark, Yamatji woman. It's going to be held in Geraldton, WA, and we're working with her sister Bernadette. We've got a bit of a fundraiser we're supporting because the costs involved for families to attend these things, it's not peanuts. And so we're promoting that. Like any help that families can get, like either physical at the coronial inquest, we try and get along to as many of the ones down here in Naarm that we can. Some of us is your folks. We've been along to Heather Calgarrett just recently, and that was another awful one at Dame Phyllis Frost. People might know that story in 2021 when, because of supposed failure to give evidence of suitable housing, she was kept in more than 12 months after she should have been released. And, and there goes her life. She's got a couple of young children. They're without their mum now, and the family is just heartbroken, of course, and the community, because, Heather was a valued member of the community. She was dearly loved. Even officers, correctional officers, apparently attended her funeral. That's how well respected she was. So we're just doing what we can as backup and, supporting in any way we can.
And in fact, Cheryl, leading up to that, I've actually got a highlight of part of an interview with Sarah Schwartz from the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service, and she talks a little bit about Heather Calgarrett on that interview, which I'll play after you.
Oh, fantastic.
And do you want to stick around while I read out some donations, Cheryl?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, go on. What's that?
I hope they're coming in thick and
Oh,
fast.
I hope so. So the donations, we're only up to $215 so far, and the target is $950. So the donations are Rob, $100. Thanks, Rob. Wow. Loretta, $50. Thank you very much. Pillar, $50. Ian McIntyre, $20. Juliet, $50. Thank you so much, everybody. And the big moment, the Indigenous Social Justice Association, $30. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm glad. But there's a half an hour to go, everybody, or 35 minutes, I think, if my clock's right. So get on the phone and ring through your your pledge. And look, if it's $10, if it's $5, I mean, 100 would be better. I mean, not better, but it'd be well respected and well deserved and well, put to good use. This station, it runs really on the smell of an oily rag, you could say.
It really does.
Compared with the dollars that float around in some of these big, media organisations that we know that deliver rubbish. I mean, really, when you look at it. So, yeah.
And we've just had another donation coming in from Peter, $30.
Ooh, beautiful.
Thanks, Peter.
My husband and I will be making a donation. It hasn't come through yet, but we will be doing it. So come on, everybody, dig deep. And, if you can't afford it this week, you can still make a pledge, I'm sure, and offer it up by perhaps the end of the month or whenever the donations really need to be back into 3CR. So, look, the coverage you give to every, all the different struggles that we very rarely hear about. The Mile Creek Massacre is another one that stands out.
Oh, yes.
I always appreciate the interviews you do about those. They're really good. And, of course, the refugee stories, the Palestinian struggle. Yep. And we know 3CR, because 3CR itself is just, such a mix of topics or, like the content. I can't, any other... the others, they use fillers and self-promotion.
Oh.
You don't have to on here because you go, it's hard to pick, when you can go out because you're too busy listening to 3CR.
That's right.
That sounds like an excuse for wintertime. But,
I know. Well, our interview started off with a bang because the Black Fella, White Fella song came on and we thought I thought the show had finished. I thought, am I meant to get my taxi now? No.
Wait till all those donations roll in. You need to be there to see them, come through.
Pick up the phone, dial 9419 8377 and donate to 3CR and the Doin Time show. And also we can't forget that I did a series on TJ Hickey at the beginning with a whole lot of interviews from the Speak Out.
Yeah. Oh, you did today? Or
At the beginning of the year.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's another one. Well, that's how East Melbourne came to be. We started as part of the National Day of Action when Uncle Ray Jackson put out a call on behalf of Gail Hickey, TJ's mum, to have this National Day of Action. And because that was, after the scam of or sham, whatever you call it, of the inquest up in Glebe for TJ Hickey after his death in custody following that police pursuit. And to this day, there's still been no justice, and the family continues to work tirelessly trying to get justice. But as we know, the system is not designed to hand out justice. It's designed to prevent that. So, we just appreciate any coverage you can ever give to, causes like that, Melissa.
And another donation has just come in from Karina, $15. Thank you so much, Karina.
Woohoo! You're getting there.
We're getting there. Cheryl, thank you so much for coming onto the program. It's been lovely to have you.
Thank you, Marissa, and just keep up the good work. And, look, as I said, we can't speak highly enough of 3CR and the whole organisation, the volunteers, the presenters. Everyone does their bit and more. So thanks a lot.
Good on you, Cheryl. Take care and we'll talk soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. And that was Cheryl from ISJA, Indigenous Social Justice Association, Melbourne. And she was speaking to us a little bit about some of the highlights that happened over the last 12 months. So pick up the phone, 9419 8377, and donate to the Doin Time show and all shows at 3CR. And it is tax deductible as well, over $2.
3CR Radiothon 2024. Sound on for solidarity.
Box-ticking exercises that so clearly haven't actually had disabled people involved.
There's so many people that I've spoken to that their health has been impacted in such a way that they're now classed as permanently disabled because they couldn't get the health help they needed because they are in poverty.
Like people with disabilities, we understand the structural causes of discrimination, and we understand how important it is that people with disabilities have a voice and are listened to.
It's really important on this International Day of Disability to hear voices that are often taken out of mainstream media.
We need your support to keep radical voices and issues on the airwaves.
To donate, call 03 9419 8377 or donate online at 3cr.org.au.
And you're back with the Doin Time edition of Radiothon Show. And I'm going to bring you another highlight. And this is an interview with Sarah Schwartz, who was a speaker at the TJ Hickey Speak Out and is the manager of the Wirraway Police and Prison Accountability Practice at the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service. And this interview really does focus quite a lot on Aboriginal deaths in custody and what the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service does. And so I will bring you that interview shortly.
My name's Sarah Schwartz. I manage the Wirraway Police and Prison Accountability Practice at the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service. So we do everything ranging from actions against the police and prisons, trying to get better people's rights protected in prison, and coronial inquest into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander deaths in police or prison custody. We work with quite a few families of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who've passed away in custody. currently we have previously represented the family of Veronica Nelson, who passed away in custody in January 2020. I'm sure many listeners have heard of her story. And just today we were in court for the coronial inquest into the passing of Heather Calgarrett, who passed away in custody just less than 2 years after Veronica passed away. And her inquest also raises issues of prison healthcare and parole, which I know you guys wanted to speak about.
I mean, we won't have time to speak about all that today, but we can certainly do an extended interview for next Monday. But the directions hearing for Heather Calgarrett was today, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had the directions hearing, which set the scope for the coronial inquest. And Heather's family, who have been, waiting for answers and justice for many years now, were successful in arguing for the scope of the inquest to also include her parole application. So, Heather passed away in November 2021. She'd been eligible for parole since December 2020. And if she'd been granted parole, she wouldn't have been in prison. And so her family have been fighting, for answers about why she wasn't granted parole and what happened with her parole application. And Heather's story really reflects so many other stories that we hear at VALS and for women in prison who, aren't granted parole for reasons like delays, like not having appropriate housing outside. And Victoria's parole system is one of the harshest in the country and has meant that so many more people, especially Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women, are just languishing behind bars when they could be in community.
That's really fantastic that you were able to explain how the parole system encourages deaths in custody and the horrors of, the violations of human rights of women in prison. Yeah, so, Victoria's parole system was changed in, there were a number of changes between 2011 and 2016, which made it a lot harder for people to access parole. And since that time, there's been a 44% decrease in the number of people on parole. We speak to people all the time who, either have chosen not to apply for parole because it's too difficult, or they've been refused parole because they don't have access to proper housing, or they don't have access to the supports that they need, or they don't have access to the programs in prison that the parole board has told them that they need to do to be eligible for parole. So it just means that so many people are, staying in prison where the whole purpose of parole is so people, are released from custody early so that they can be in community, which supports their rehabilitation. And people aren't getting access to that, and they're just staying in custody for longer. So specifically, Heather Calgarrett died at Sunshine Hospital. How did she end up in there? So the coronial inquest into Heather's passing is going to start on the 29th of April, so we'll get a lot more details then. But, Heather, we know already from what the court has told the public that Heather received a injection of buprenorphine the day before she was found unconscious at Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. She was found by her sister, Suzanne Calgarrett, who's been a really powerful advocate for her. And so the coronial inquest is going to look at, the appropriateness of her health care that she was provided in custody, her mental health care, and also at this parole issue. Yeah, and in fact, she comes from quite a few lands, doesn't she? She's a very proud Noongar woman and Pitjantjatjara woman as well. Yeah, Heather Calgarrett's proud Yamatji, Noongar, Wongai and Pitjantjatjara woman. And, her family, they've released some statements today, which I'd really urge people to read, speaking about how much she loved her culture, how much she enjoyed painting and writing and, had a really amazing sense of humour and was the rock of her family, was always helping and caring for everyone. And her family's made really beautiful statements about her mum, Auntie Jenny Calgarrett, and her sister, Suzanne Calgarrett. The Doin Time show has a very long history of reading statements out by the loved ones of people that have died in custody. And we will continue to do so. And we've also had a history of interviewing people from VALS as well. So, Sarah, I am so happy that you've come onto the show, and later on, after the show finishes, we'll call you to plan for next week. But in the meantime, I wanted to really honour the fact that you're here and that you're helping to actually broadcast media that is not broadcasted in the mainstream.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Marissa, and thanks for the Doing Time show. You guys do such awesome work. And, as you say, it's just so important that these stories are told, that Heather's story is told, that other people who've died in custody, that their stories are told. You know, we rarely hear about systems like the parole system and the prison healthcare system, and we know that these are really corrupt systems that are in crisis and are just leading to death behind bars. So important that your show is uplifting those stories.
Well, you've emailed me a list of inquests that I'd really like to work through over the year with you, and just to talk about those. I mean, obviously we can't talk if there's, if they're in progress, we can't talk in detail. But obviously, when those findings happen, we can do that.
Yeah. So, we're a bit limited in what we can say while the inquests are going on, but there are quite a few coronial inquests that we're waiting for findings on. So the passing of Michael Suckling, who passed away at Ravenhall, whose inquest was last year, the passing of Narisha Cash, who passed away whilst waiting for police to attend her house, are just some of the inquest findings that we are waiting for in the inquest findings into people who've died in police or prison custody or after police contact.
Absolutely, and it's good that this inquest with Heather Calgarrett, that's starting on the 29th of April, and that will run for a couple of months.
It will run for about 3 weeks from the 29th of April, maybe extended. And it's going to really tackle those big issues of healthcare and parole and the reasons why Heather passed away in custody.
Sarah, thank you so much for coming onto the program. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we finish?
I just want to, pay tribute to Heather's family in their fight for justice. There have been over 560 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who've died in custody since the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. Families, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families continue to show up and fight for justice for their loved ones. And also just want to do a shout out to the Darjua Foundation and other organisations who support and work with those families and continue to really fight for justice and for an end to Aboriginal deaths in custody.
And in case you've just tuned in, this is the 3CR Radiothon, Doin Time. It's approximately 4:40. And you were listening to an interview with Sarah Schwartz looking at Heather Calgarrett and various other inquests that have happened. So pick up the phone, 9419 8377, and donate to 3CR Doin Time Show. We've just had another donation come in, and it's from Abraham, and he has donated $100. Thank you very much for your pledge, Abraham, and your donation. Thanks a lot. And the Doin Time Show brings you a lot of coverage, not just about deaths in custody, but also about women in prison. And women in prison has been a very, very important contribution over many years of the Doin Time Show. And before my time, there were some women that had exited prison doing the show, and there's been quite a lot of history with that. And in fact, last week or a couple of weeks ago, we interviewed Nina from Flat Out, and she was talking about strip search, and I did a little bit of a series on that as well. And we also interviewed Samantha Lee, who's the senior solicitor from the Redfern Community Legal Centre as well, speaking about strip searching as well. But Nina in particular focused on women in prison and looking at the submission to do with strip searching. We're going to be going on now to another highlight, and this is with Meena Singh, an interview that I did some weeks ago now. Meena is a proud Yorta woman and Commissioner for Victorian Aboriginal Children and Young People in Victoria, and she joined me to discuss her work in advancing the rights and interests of Aboriginal children and young people in Victoria and how to address the overrepresentation of Aboriginal children in child protection and the youth justice system. So I'll bring you that interview, and while you're listening, grab a cup of tea or whatever you do and go online and donate to the Doin Time show. We now have, I believe, $445, and our target is $950. So, yeah, stick around and listen to this highlight.
Yeah, well, I was born on Wurundjeri country, and that's the country I'm on now, and I live on Bunurong country.
Beautiful. Now, let me just check something with you. I am positive that I did an interview with you.
Yes.
And no, I don't think it was Monique, was it?
No, I think it was just you and I when I was the Human Rights Law Centre, so it would have been 2022.
Right, because maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I think it might have been just you and I. Anyway, there have been so many interviews there. Some wonderful lawyers there.
They are excellent.
Lovely to have you. So, Meena, can you tell us a little bit about your role as Commissioner and what's done there?
Yeah, so I work with the Commission for Children and Young People. I work alongside a Principal Commissioner, Leanna Buchanan, and whilst Leanna's role is in legislation, there's a Commission for Children and Young People Act. My role isn't in legislation. It's just what they call an other commissioner that can be appointed under the legislation. So we've had a Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People for this is the 11th year of having a commissioner. I'm nearly 2 years into my role. And what I see the main role of my work, or the point of my work, is to raise the voices and experiences of Aboriginal children and young people, particularly in spaces of youth justice and child protection, but also wherever they are, basically. The experiences they're having in education, in sport, a whole range of places, and to advocate for their rights and advocate for their safety. And so using the Commission's powers and tools, so we can do things like systemic inquiries or individual inquiries into children and what's happening to them. We monitor where children are in youth justice and in out-of-home care. And we also are a regulator, so we regulate child safe standards, which is, organisations need to make sure where children are, they're safe and they're free from harm and abuse, and also the reportable conduct scheme, which is the scheme that comes in if there's been abuse or mistreatment against the child.
And how does being First Nations, how do I say this? Does the Victorian government obviously acknowledge stolen generation and colonisation when these inquiries are happening?
I think they do, but I don't think enough is understood about the ongoing impact and how we see past injustices entrench certain conditions that lead to disadvantage and current negative perceptions and for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I think often we talk about things like stolen generations as being in the past, or we talk about colonisation as being in the past, without thinking about, it's actually an ongoing legacy. It's something that is still continuing, that we're still feeling the effects of. We live in a colonised society. The systems that Aboriginal people live under are colonised systems. And what I'm very much interested in is how do we decolonise these systems? How do we use Aboriginal knowledge, which ways of doing that have kept us strong for over 60,000 years? How do we use that to decolonise the system that we're subject to?
What would be an example of decolonisation?
Something as simple as the way that we think about who family is. For Aboriginal community and for a lot of non-white Western communities, other Indigenous communities of colour around the world, our concepts and ideas of family are much larger than Western nuclear two parents and a kid type families. We consider family not just our parents, but we consider our aunts and uncles, our grandparents, a whole network of adults who are involved in raising children. That's a very Indigenous way of working and being. But what we have are systems that very much focus on having only a mum and only a dad. And we know that that doesn't cover what a lot of families experience and what a lot of families go to. In Aboriginal community, it's a strength of our community and our culture that everyone, all the adults, have a part to play in raising children. And again, that's also a feature of lots of other non-white communities. Yet, when we see that, we often see that as a deficit in that, why isn't a parent, the direct biological parent, providing all the care for a family? Why isn't it just that person playing a role? And I think if we rethink how we think about family, how we think about structures, and think about things like multi-generational families and houses, who lives in a house, we start to unpack what realities are for a lot of families that don't fit into that neat nuclear family type.
And you just heard a highlight from Meena Singh, an interview with her in regards to advancing the rights of Aboriginal children. And it's approximately 4:48, and we've just had another donation come in from Joseph, who was our first interviewee on the show, and he has donated $100. Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. So now we are up to $545 for the target, and it won't be too late to donate after the show. So once this show's over, listeners can still call and donate to the Doin Time show, and indeed to all shows at 3CR. So you can donate online by jumping on the website www.3cr.org.au, or you can drop into the station, 21 Smith Street, Collingwood, or you can pick up the phone now or later on 9419 8377. And I believe if you want to mail a cheque to PO Box 1277, Collingwood, Victoria 3065. So it's PO Box 1277. And it's approximately 4:50, and we're going to be ending our show pretty soon, but not quite yet. And I think I may have time to play one more highlight from Sue-Ann Hunter, who is part of the Uruk Commission and truth-telling, and she is going to be speaking about highlighting the importance of land, sky and water, as well as the ongoing impact of colonisation. And in fact, the Doin Time show did a lot of interviews about this, and I'll just play that highlight for you now.
Yes, I'm Murundri and Naray Ilam Murung, so a Victorian traditional owner.
Beautiful. Sue-Ann, could you just speak more into the phone if you can? You're coming across a bit soft.
Okay, let me just...
That's better. Yeah.
How's that?
Oh, that's wonderful, beautiful.
Not a problem.
Now, Sue-Ann, could you just give us a general update on what Uruk is and where it's up to?
Yeah, so we're Australia's first formal truth-telling body into systemic injustices for First Peoples, though we are the only state doing that at the moment, so for all of Victoria. And we're looking at systemic injustice for First Peoples from 1788 to current, so historical injustices and current injustices.
And how has that been for you to preside over all that?
So was a 3-year anniversary of being appointed last week. So we originally only had 3 years, but we've got an extra year to do it. It's been a lot. It's lots going on. Our people have been amazing in coming forward and telling their truth. And, you know, what an honour to hear elders, young people, women, children, and as in the case of going into prisons and listening to men and women in there around their stories. It's and then of course holding government to account through hearings and recommendations. It's been a long process. We've still got a year to go, but absolutely amazing. And you know, Victoria is leading the way.
Indeed, and I'm hoping that we can also help our Indigenous brothers and sisters in prison as well with this.
Yeah, definitely. If we go back to I think I spoke to you about our You Look for Justice, or it was around the hearing time. Mm-hmm. And so that's our reporting to Victoria's Child Protection and Criminal Justice System. And that was, I think it was about over a year ago.
Yep.
And then we got the response from the government just before our Land, Sky and Waters hearing started. And so we had 46 recommendations in that report. And the disappointment was that 4 out of the 46 recommendations were accepted in full and 24 were accepted in principle. You know, these recommendations, they're crucial to, given the over-incarceration of our people and our adults and our children, particularly ongoing deaths in custody, and these recommendations weren't made lightly. So those recommendations go to the heart of addressing the injustices for our First Peoples. Those reports are worth reading in full. You also see the past as the present and how the incarceration and deaths of our people look today, and they still continue today from the past.
Absolutely.
So
before we move on to the land, sky and sea, can you just tell us where we can find those reports?
Yeah, on our website. So it's www.ywook, .org.au. So it's Your Wook Justice Commission. Those reports are on there, and all those hearings where we brought the state to the stand, plus Land, Sky and Waters, the current hearings we just finished, are all on there. So if you look in under hearings, under evidence, and go to hearings, you'll be able to see. Go to reports and you'll see our latest report from the Child Protection and Criminal Justice System as well.
It's lovely. It's really fantastic the way people have been able to come forward and tell their stories. It's really important.
Oh, it is really important, and to honour those their truths about what has happened, but also to be believed. I think people, we listen for a purpose, and we listen and hold space for purpose. And the fact that we can put these injustices on the record for First Peoples, and they will be there, forever, and they help form the recommendations for our reports. So the people might say it's just another Royal Commission with another load of recommendations, but these recommendations will be negotiated within the First Peoples Assembly, so they can pick them up and run with them through the treaty process.
And it's approximately 4:55, and we have a couple of minutes left of our show. And thank you to everybody that's donated. We do have another donation that's just come in, and it's from Claus, who is the husband of the beautiful Cheryl. So beautiful Claus, they've both donated $70. And thank you very much, Claus. So much appreciated. Much love. And we've only got about a minute before I'm out of here. And just one last thing, just wanted to say also that the Doin Time show also does a lot of off-site recordings all over Melbourne and indeed all over Australia, overseas sometimes. Or not yet, but never know. So pretty soon we're going to be having the Climate Action show coming up next, and we'll be going out now with our theme song, Black Fella, White Fella by the Rumpy Band. and keep donating to Doin Time Show and all shows at 3CR. Bye, and take care of each other. Bye.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast. If you found it valuable, please consider donating or subscribing to support independent community radio. To find out more, go to 3cr.org.au.